In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Spiral, where 1,000 species bow before the might of the Zephyrian Empire, Emperor Vexthalon has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. He has seen warriors who could shatter planets with their bare hands, scholars who could bend reality with their minds, and creatures so ancient they remembered the birth of stars. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what he would discover in the forgotten sectors of his own empire. A single human, a species so unremarkable that they barely registered on the galactic census, a being so ordinary that most of his subjects would step over one without a second glance. Yet this human had done something that defied every law of nature, every rule of cosmic hierarchy, and every assumption about the natural order of the universe. They had earned the loyalty of a celestial dragon hatchling, not through conquest, not through magic, not through technology or threats or bribes, through simple, stubborn, utterly human compassion. And when the most powerful being in the galaxy arrived to reclaim what was rightfully his, he found himself face to face with a truth that would shake the very foundations of his empire. Sometimes the strongest force in the universe isn't power, it's the refusal to abandon those who need you most. This is the story of how a human custodian taught an emperor what it truly means to be strong. The emergency beacon pierced through hyperspace like a dying star's final scream, its crimson pulse reaching across 3 star systems before finding its intended target. Emperor Vexthalon felt the distress signal through his neural implants even before his flagship sensors could decode its origin. The message was simple, urgent, and completely unexpected. One of his celestial dragon eggs had hatched in the abandoned research facility on Kepler, 42b. Vexthalon's massive form shifted in his crystalline throne, his forearms gesturing with practiced authority as holographic displays materialized around him. The celestial dragons were more than just rare. They were extinct save for the few dozen eggs his empire had collected over millennia of conquest. Each egg was worth more than entire solar systems, their potential occupants destined to become living weapons of unimaginable power. The fact that one had activated after 3 centuries of dormancy should have been cause for celebration. Instead, the emperor felt a cold dread settling in his chest. How long has the facility been offline? His voice resonated through the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, causing lesser crew members to instinctively bow lower at their stations. 73 standard years, your omnipotence, replied Commander Zalthoris, his reptilian features taut with concern. The last transmission indicated a complete evacuation due to solar radiation fluctuations. The automated systems were left to maintain the specimen vault. Automated systems that should have prevented any egg from hatching without proper neural conditioning protocols. Vexthalon's voice carried the weight of absolute authority, but underneath lurked something his subjects rarely heard: uncertainty. The emperor rose from his throne, his towering height casting shadows across the bridge. At 12 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like liquid mercury and eyes that burned with the light of collapsed stars, Vexthalon was the product of genetic engineering spanning millions of years. His ancestors had conquered death itself, transforming their bodies into perfect instruments of war and governance. Yet for all his power, he had never encountered a situation quite like this. "Prepare the assault fleet," he commanded. "If a hatchling has emerged without conditioning, it will be feral, dangerous, and completely uncontrollable. We'll need containment specialists and neural suppressors." "Your omnipotence," Zalthoris hesitated, his clawed fingers dancing over his control interface. "The beacon's readings are unusual. The hatchling's biosignature suggests it's not in distress. In fact, all indicators point to a remarkably stable emotional state." Vexthalon's burning gaze fixed on his commander. In 3,000 years of rule, he had learned to read the subtle signs of fear in his subordinates. Zalthoris wasn't just concerned, he was terrified of something. "Show me the full sensor sweep." The Emperor ordered. The holographic display expanded, revealing a 3-dimensional map of the research facility. The structure itself was modest by imperial standards. a collection of reinforced domes connected by underground tunnels designed to weather the violent solar storms that regularly battered Kepler 442b's surface. The facility's power core was still active, its energy signature steady and unremarkable. What was remarkable was the life sign analysis. There, Zalthoris pointed to a cluster of readings near the specimen vault, the hatchling's biosignature, as expected. But look at this secondary reading. A smaller, weaker signal appeared alongside the dragon's massive life force. The analysis data scrolled past in alien script, but Vexthalen's enhanced mind processed it instantly. Carbon-based, bilateral symmetry, primitive neural structure. Average mass approximately 70 kilograms. A scavenger species, the Emperor mused. Probably broke into the facility looking for salvage and stumbled upon the hatchling. The dragon likely consumed it within minutes of emerging. That was my initial assessment as well, Your Omnipotence, Zalthoris said carefully. However, the temporal analysis suggests both life signs have been stable for approximately 6 standard months. They're not just occupying the same space, they're coexisting. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's massive engines. Vexthalan processed this information with the cold efficiency that had made him the undisputed ruler of 47 galaxies. Celestial dragons were apex predators, engineered in the cosmic dark between galaxies by beings whose names had been forgotten before his empire's first star was born. They bonded with nothing, trusted nothing, and consumed everything in their path until properly conditioned through decades of neural conditioning. The idea that one could coexist peacefully with any other life form was not just unlikely, it was impossible. Set course for Kepler, 442b, he commanded. Maximum acceleration. I want to see this impossibility for myself. The journey through hyperspace gave Vexthalan time to review everything his empire knew about celestial dragons. The files were extensive, compiled over millions of years of careful study and painful experimentation. Dragons were born with intelligence that surpassed most sapient species, but their emotional development remained completely alien to conventional understanding. They formed bonds only through complex neural conditioning protocols that took decades to complete and required constant reinforcement through psychic manipulation. Without this conditioning, a dragon would exist in a state of perpetual rage, lashing out at anything that moved until it eventually burned itself out in a blaze of cosmic fire. The few times in recorded history that an egg had hatched prematurely, the resulting creature had destroyed everything within a 100-mile radius before Imperial forces could contain it. Yet somehow, impossibly, this hatchling had been calm for 6 months. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, its massive bulk casting shadows across the inner planets. Vexthalan stood in his private observation chamber watching as his fleet of 12 dreadnoughts took defensive positions around the target world. The planet itself was unremarkable, a rocky sphere with a thin atmosphere and a violent, unstable star that periodically bombarded its surface with lethal radiation. Surface scans confirmed the earlier readings. Your Omnipotence, Zalthoris reported through the communication array. 2 life signs in the primary facility, both stable. Both active. Active how? They appear to be moving together. Coordinated movement patterns suggest interaction. Vexthalan felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Genuine curiosity. He had conquered species that could manipulate time itself, absorbed civilizations that had transcended physical existence, and witnessed the birth and death of entire realities. But this simple puzzle, how a primitive alien had somehow bonded with an unconditioned dragon, fascinated him in ways he couldn't articulate. "Prepare my personal transport," he ordered. "I'm going down there myself." The surface of Kepler, 442b, was a wasteland of crystallized sand and twisted metal, the remnants of cities that had been scoured clean by solar radiation decades ago. Vexthalan's transport craft landed near the research facility with barely a whisper, its advanced shielding protecting him from the ambient radiation that would have killed most organic life within minutes. He emerged from the craft alone, having dismissed his usual retinue of bodyguards and advisors. This was something he needed to see with his own eyes, without the filter of his subjects' interpretations. The facility's main entrance had been sealed with emergency protocols, but such barriers meant nothing to someone with his capabilities. A gesture of his hand sent waves of force through the reinforced door, reducing it to constituent atoms. The interior of the facility was dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows along the corridors. Vexthalon moved silently through the complex, his enhanced senses painting a detailed picture of his surroundings. The air was stale but breathable, the temperature maintained by automated systems that had been running faithfully for decades. As he approached the specimen vault, he began to hear something that stopped him in his tracks. Voices. Not the telepathic communication he had expected from a dragon, but actual vocalization. One voice was deep, resonant, carrying harmonics that spoke of power beyond measure. The other was smaller, higher, speaking in patterns his universal translator struggled to decode. I know you're getting bigger every day, but you can't keep eating the recycling processors, the smaller voice was saying. We've talked about this. Those components are what keep our air clean. The responding sound was something between a purr and a rumble, followed by what could only be described as laughter. Don't give me that innocent look. I saw you eyeing the water purification system yesterday. Vexthalon pressed himself against the corridor wall, using his advanced optics to peer around the corner into the specimen vault. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about the universe. The vault was a vast circular chamber, its walls lined with hundreds of containment pods that had once held the Empire's most precious biological specimens. Most of the pods were empty now, their contents long since relocated to more secure facilities. But at the center of the chamber, curled around a makeshift sleeping area, was a celestial dragon hatchling. The creature was magnificent, even at only 6 months of age. Its scales shifted between deep purple and silver, each one etched with patterns that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. Its wings, still too small for flight, were folded against its body and its eyes. Those ancient, knowing eyes that marked it as something far older than its physical form suggested were focused intently on its companion. That companion was, without question, the most unremarkable being Vexthalon had ever seen. The human was average in every conceivable way. Medium height, brown hair that looked like it had been cut with improvised tools, and clothing that appeared to be a mixture of salvaged facility uniforms and makeshift repairs. There was nothing special about this creature's physical form, nothing that would distinguish it from billions of other similar beings scattered across the galaxy, except for the fact that it was having a casual conversation with one of the most dangerous predators in existence. Look, I get it, the human was saying, gesturing toward a pile of metal components that had clearly been chewed on. Everything here probably tastes better than the ration bars I've been feeding you. But we need those systems if we're going to survive until the next supply ship comes by. The dragon, a creature that should have incinerated this being on sight, tilted its massive head and made a sound that was unmistakably apologetic. Okay, I forgive you, but no more eating the important stuff. If you're still hungry, I've got a whole storage room full of old research equipment. You can chew on that all you want. Vexthalon watched in stunned silence as the dragon nuzzled against the human with obvious affection. The creature's size already dwarfed its companion, and it was being extraordinarily careful not to harm the fragile being it had somehow bonded with. This was impossible. This violated every law of nature, every principle of draconic behavior, every precedent in the Empire's vast databases. Yet here it was, happening right in front of him. The human looked up suddenly as if sensing his presence, and their eyes met across the chamber. There was no fear in that gaze, no recognition of the cosmic power that stood before them, just curiosity and perhaps a hint of protectiveness as they moved slightly to position themselves between the dragon and this unknown intruder. "Can I help you?" the human asked, their voice carrying the same casual tone they had used with the dragon. For the first time in 3 millennia, Emperor Vexthalon found himself at a complete loss for words. The dragon had noticed him now, its head swiveling toward the entrance with predatory grace. but instead of the aggressive posture he expected, the creature simply watched him with those ancient eyes as if waiting to see what he would do. There was intelligence there, yes, but also something else. A sense of security, of belonging, that spoke of bonds far deeper than mere survival. "You're not supposed to be here," Vexthalin finally managed, his voice carrying less authority than usual. "Neither are you, I'm guessing. This place has been abandoned for decades. I'm Marcus Chen, facility custodian. Well, former custodian. These days, I'm more of a dragon babysitter." The casual way this Marcus Chen spoke about caring for a celestial dragon struck Vexthalin like a physical blow. He was accustomed to beings who trembled in his presence, who could barely form coherent thoughts in the face of his overwhelming power. This human was treating him like a neighbor who had wandered into the wrong yard. "That creature," Vexthalin said, gesturing toward the dragon, "is one of the most dangerous predators in the known universe. It should have killed you the moment it emerged from its egg." Marcus glanced back at the dragon, which had settled into a more comfortable position but kept its attention fixed on the Emperor. "Stella? Dangerous? I mean, she's got some serious firepower, sure, but she's basically a overgrown puppy. Aren't you, girl?" The dragon, Stella apparently, made that purring sound again, a noise that no properly conditioned dragon would ever make. "Stella?" Vexthalin repeated. Stellar Draconis was the scientific designation on her containment pod, Marcus explained. Seemed a bit formal for everyday use. "She likes Stella better. Don't you, Stella?" The dragon's response was unmistakable. She was pleased with her name. Vexthalin felt the foundations of his understanding beginning to crack. This human had not only survived contact with an unconditioned dragon, they had named it, bonded with it, and apparently been caring for it for months. Everything his empire had learned about celestial dragons over millions of years suggested this scenario was completely impossible, yet here it was, undeniably real. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus tilted his head. "How what? How are you still alive? How did it not kill you? How did you bond with it?" The human's expression softened, and for the first time since Vexthalin's arrival, Marcus seemed to really look at him. "You know what she is, don't you? You're here for her." But it wasn't a question, and the Emperor found himself nodding before he could stop himself. "I was wondering when someone would show up," Marcus said quietly. An egg like hers doesn't just appear in an abandoned research facility without someone somewhere keeping track of it. "You're her owner." Owner, keeper, emperor. Vexthalin's voice carried its usual authority, but somehow it felt hollow in this strange chamber. "That dragon is worth more than most star systems. It represents power beyond your comprehension." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hand resting gently on Stella's snout. The dragon's eyes had closed partway, clearly enjoying the contact. "She hatched alone," Marcus said finally. "Scared, confused, probably hungry. The automated systems weren't designed to care for a living being, just maintain temperature and atmosphere. When I found her, she was crying." "Dragons don't cry?" Vexthalin stated with absolute certainty. "This one did." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. She was just a baby, emperor or no emperor, and babies need someone to care about them. The simple truth of that statement hit Vexthalin with unexpected force. In all his centuries of rule, in all his vast knowledge of dragon conditioning and neural manipulation, he had never considered the possibility that these creatures might simply need companionship. "You don't understand," he said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Celestial dragons are weapons. They're bred for conquest, designed for destruction. Without proper conditioning." "She's never hurt me," Marcus interrupted. "Not once, not even by accident. She's careful, gentle. She watches out for me." As if to prove his point, Stella shifted slightly, her massive form curling protectively around Marcus while keeping her attention focused on Vexthalan. The message was clear. She would defend her human if necessary. The Emperor stared at this impossible tableau, one of the most powerful predators in existence showing maternal protectiveness toward one of the weakest species he had ever encountered. Every piece of data he possessed said this couldn't happen, yet he was watching it unfold before his eyes. 6 months, he said, more to himself than to Marcus. You've been caring for her for 6 months. 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, Marcus corrected with a small smile. Not that I'm counting or anything. Vexthalin found himself taking a step closer, his scientific curiosity overriding his imperial authority. What do you feed her? How do you communicate? What happens when she has nightmares? She likes the old research equipment, mostly metals with interesting crystalline structures. We communicate just fine. She's smarter than most people I've met. And when she has nightmares, Marcus's expression grew sad. She dreams about being alone, I think. About being trapped in that egg for so long. I just stay with her until she calms down. The Emperor's enhanced mind processed this information, cross-referencing it with everything he knew about dragon psychology. The feeding pattern made sense. Young dragons needed specific mineral compositions for proper scale development. The intelligence was expected. Dragons were among the most intellectually gifted species in the universe. But the emotional support, the simple presence during distress, that was something no conditioning protocol had ever accounted for. You realize, Vexthalin said slowly, that I could simply take her. My fleet surrounds this planet. My power could level this entire facility. Marcus nodded, showing no sign of fear. I figured as much. You're obviously not human, and that ship that landed outside is way beyond anything our species has built. If you wanted to take her, there's not much I could do to stop you. Then why aren't you afraid? Because, Marcus said, his hand still resting on Stella's snout, taking her won't do you any good. Look at her, really, look at her. She's not some weapon waiting to be activated. She's a person. She has preferences, opinions, fears, joys. You can drag her away from here, but you can't make her into something she's not. Vexthalin did look, studying the dragon with senses that could perceive across multiple dimensions. What he saw shook him to his core. Stella's biosignature showed none of the usual markers of an unconditioned dragon. No rage, no predatory aggression, no emotional instability. Instead, her neural patterns showed something he had never seen in her species: contentment. This changes everything, he whispered, the weight of realization settling over him like a collapsing star. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Everything like what? The Emperor looked at this unremarkable human who had somehow accomplished the impossible. Then at the dragon who had found peace in the most unlikely of circumstances. In that moment, he understood that he wasn't just witnessing an anomaly. He was seeing the first cracks in the foundation of everything his empire had been built upon. Everything, he repeated, his voice carrying a mixture of wonder and dread. The universe had just become a much more complicated place. Emperor Vexthalin spent the next 3 hours in the specimen vault watching Marcus and Stella interact with the fascination of a scientist discovering a new law of physics. Every exchange between them defied his understanding of draconic behavior. Every gentle touch challenged millennia of accepted wisdom about their species. You mentioned nightmares, the Emperor said during a lull in their conversation. Celestial dragons aren't supposed to dream. Their neural structure should prevent REM sleep patterns entirely. Marcus looked up from where he was performing what appeared to be routine maintenance on Stella's claws, a task that should have resulted in his immediate incineration. Well, she definitely dreams. Usually she's pretty peaceful, but sometimes she gets restless, twitches, makes these worried little sounds. I figured out that if I sing to her, she settles down faster. You sing to a celestial dragon, Vexthalin said flatly. Don't judge. I'm not good at it, but she seems to like it anyway. Marcus paused in his work, looking thoughtful. Actually, she taught herself to harmonize with me. Want to hear? Before the Emperor could respond, Marcus began humming a simple melody, something that sounded like a lullaby from an ancient Earth culture. After a few bars, Stella joined in with a low, resonant tone that perfectly complemented the human's voice. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, filling the vast chamber with harmonies that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the physical. Vexthalin felt something stir in his chest, an emotion so foreign he couldn't immediately identify it. The closest comparison in his experience was what he felt when observing the birth of a new star, but this was warmer, more intimate. It took him several moments to realize what he was experiencing. Peace. The song ended and Stella nuzzled against Marcus with obvious contentment. The human scratched behind one of her horn nubs, a gesture that made the dragon's eyes half closed with pleasure. Impossible, Vexthalin muttered, but there was less conviction in his voice than before. You keep saying that, Marcus observed. Maybe the problem isn't what's happening, but what you expected to happen. The Emperor's burning gaze fixed on the human. I have ruled for 3,000 years. I have conquered civilizations that existed before your star was born. My knowledge of celestial dragons spans epochs. I know what is possible and what is not. Do you? Marcus asked quietly. When's the last time you spent 6 months caring for a baby dragon? When's the last time you sat with one during a nightmare, or taught one to sing, or had to explain why they can't eat the water purification system?
Vexthalin opened his mouth to deliver a crushing retort, then stopped.
In all his vast experience, in all his empire's accumulated knowledge, he realized he had never actually spent time with an unconditioned dragon.